Good evening, everyone. I apologize for our tardiness. Our executive session ran over time. Colleagues, can I get a motion and a second to reconvene the public session of the meeting?
So moved, Ross.
Second, Castellano Minaya.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Could we all please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance? Colleagues, can I get a motion and second to accept minutes of the Board of Education regular meeting held on May 7th, 2024, and accept minutes of the Board of Education Committee of the Whole meeting held on May 22nd, 2024, as submitted by the clerk and secretary to the Board of Education?
So moved, Castellano Minaya.
Second, Lewis.
All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries. First up on our agenda is Board of Education announcements. And before I yield to any of my colleagues, I just have a quick statement I would like to read. So tonight I'm reading a statement clarifying some remarks I made at the May 6th Board of Education meeting regarding the Industrial Development Agency, the IDA. I want to first apologize to former city managers Chuck Strom and Kathleen Gill. My comments were in no way meant to be disparaging to these two individuals who I hold in very high regards. I stated at the last meeting, we asked Chuck Strom and Kathleen Gill for a board member to be on the board. There was no seat open. They said no. I want to clarify this statement. When I became president of the Board of Education in July 2022, our former Board of Education colleague, Amy Moselli, who sat on the IDA board, completed her term on the Board of Education, but remained on the IDA board to complete her term. At that point, there was no current sitting Board of Education member serving as a representative on the IDA. Board of Education leadership asked the superintendent of schools at the time, Jonathan Raymond, to speak with City Manager Strom to inquire if there would be the ability to have a Board of Education member on the IDA. I also followed that up with an email directly to City Manager Strom inquiring the same. City Manager Strom responded to that email and explained that it was not possible to add a Board of Education member until Amy Moselli's IDA term ended, which just ended on February 28th, 2024. I mistakenly added former City Manager Gill to my comments made at the last meeting. I thought she was on the email thread that I sent, but after reviewing, she was not, and I apologize for that as well. I want to be clear that my comments were not meant to be misleading or duplicitous, nor are they intended to be negative or accusatory in any way to these individuals. And I want to assure the community that we will have Board of Education representative on the IDA moving forward. Do any of my colleagues have any other announcements they would like to make? Seeing none, we'll move on to the superintendent's update. So Dr. Reynolds, I'll throw it over to you.
Thank you very much, President Iannuzzi. To our board trustees, I thank you very much for this opportunity to speak directly with our community. Good evening to everyone who's sitting in the audience, and good evening to everyone who's watching from home or will be watching at a later date. It is my pleasure tonight to share with you that I'm only going to have 1 point for my report. And I know sometimes people look at me and say, when will he shut up? So this evening, we are here to do nothing more than celebrate our teachers. And this evening, we are going to be granting tenure to quite a few people who are here in person in the audience. So we wanted to acknowledge you in the beginning of the meeting because it is now 10 minutes to 8, and I don't know if you want to spend that much time with me this evening. So tonight, I want to share with you really what tenure is. Tenure is absolutely a right. Tenure is a right as it relates to teachers. And that may not sound correct, but it is. Actually, the action of not taking any action as it relates to a teacher leads to tenure. That's called getting tenure by estoppel. But what's more important is that we have an opportunity to really create a relationship with those people who are in charge of our most precious resources, our children. And that is what the probationary period is for. And in most cases, in New York State, the probationary period lasts 4 years, unless you've received tenure in another school district in the same type of certification area. If you've received tenure in a prior school district, then your probationary period is 3 years. And during that time, Most, and I say that specifically, most of your evaluations must be either effective or highly effective. If you receive what's called an ineffective or developing, thank you, thank you to the president of Fuse, or developing, then there's a consideration for us to extend your probationary period by about a year, and that's called receiving JUUL. So you're getting a whole law class tonight. This evening, we are in such a great way here in New Rochelle, and we're going to acknowledge those persons who have RSVP'd to state that they'll be here this evening to receive tenure. I'm going to state to each of you now that although tenure is a right, it is also a responsibility. Receiving tenure is not carte blanche. Receiving tenure is such a responsibility that I'm going to quote Uncle Ben from Spider-Man. With great responsibility, with great power comes great responsibility. I'm going to reverse that. With great responsibility comes great power. It is our job to relate ourselves to our students so that our students can relate themselves to what it is they're supposed to learn. Oftentimes, we are the parent of that student, and I'm stating that, for 5 hours a day. And oftentimes, that is the most regulated portion of many of our students' days. So please, with this great power, take the responsibility of being that loving force that every one of our children need, okay? So now, all the seriousness aside, I want to ask you, when I call your name, please stand and remain standing as your class is called. So this evening, we would like to recognize in the audience tonight, up for tenure, and a part that I didn't mention is, even though you may work for a principal or a department chair, they recommend to me whether you should be recommended for tenure. The superintendent does not grant tenure. The superintendent recommends to the Board of Education. It is a trust process. It's a relationship process. So the board trusts that my recommendation is well backed by data. I trust that the principal's recommendation is well backed by data. And I also trust that that data is going to be seen in a greater force now that you have tenure, okay? All right. I remember getting tenure. My hair that's down here was up here, but we won't talk about that. So this evening, we are recognizing, and I'm going to do this backwards, from Webster Elementary School, our elementary teacher, Miss Patricia Pericas. I got it right. Please stand to be recognized. From Ward Elementary School, an elementary teacher, Ms. Nicole Conlisk. From Ward Elementary School, our special education teacher, Ms. Maria Bolfamonte. From Ward Elementary School, our art teacher, Ms. Maria Belinquete. Did I say that correctly? Okay. Please do not hesitate to correct me. One thing that is most important to me is our name. It's something that is given to us by our parents and our family and for generations, and it's something we need to honor. So if I mispronounce your name, please correct me, okay? From Ward Elementary School, our art teacher, Ms. Jennifer DiGiacomo. From Ward Elementary School, an elementary teacher, Ms. Emanuela Thomas. From Ward Elementary School, our special education teacher, Ms. Alexandra Williams. From Ward Elementary School, a teaching assistant, Ms. Crystal Teixeira. From Trinity Elementary School, an elementary teacher, Ms. Rachel Collins. From Trinity Elementary School, an art teacher, Ms. Alana DeVito. From New Rochelle High School, a teaching assistant, Ms. Lona Jacques Gill. From New Rochelle High School, a science teacher, Mr. Jonathan La Rosa. From New Rochelle High School, an English teacher, Miss Darlene O'Connell. From Columbus Elementary School, an elementary teacher, Miss Lauren Bassett. I believe watching at home via Zoom from Barnard Early Childhood Center, an ENL teacher, Miss Deborah LaDolce. And from Albert Leonard Middle School, our world language teacher, Miss Lena Arboleda. Yes. Oh. Now, while we've had an opportunity to recognize many of our instructional practitioners, this next person is very near and dear to my heart. This is a person who I've had the pleasure of working beside for 2 years, a person who seems like they've always been here in New Rochelle, and I can't believe that this person is just being recommended for tenure. I've also, and I'm going to disclose because we talked about disclosure, I'm also going to disclose that I've had the opportunity of knowing this person for well over 20 years, as I was this person's own personal children's first grade teacher. So I am meeting her in a different vein. Many of us already know her because in order for you to get tenure, you had to be hired, and this person probably made you your offer. So tonight, being recognized for a tenure, our Executive Director for Human Resources, Ms. Tracy Jackson. So ladies and gentlemen, on behalf of the children and the parents in the City School District of New Rochelle, on behalf of your coworkers, on behalf of your administration, but mostly on behalf of me, thank you very much for your time and dedication to our children, and I wish you nothing but the best in your future endeavors as you stay committed to the City School District of New Rochelle. Congratulations, everyone. Now, before I move on, did I miss anyone? Oh, Lordy. No, it's not okay. So please tell me your name and your school. Stop right there. From New Rochelle High School, health and physical education teacher, Miss Jessica Rosa. Now, I don't know if the camera can see you, but because you got a special announcement, you got to take a bow. You have to take a bow. There you go. Excellent. Please forgive me. And with that, Mr. President, I turn over the mic and I relinquish the microphone. And thank you again for this opportunity to recognize our teachers. For our teachers, it's a school night, so if you would like to leave, it's okay. You will not hurt our feelings.
Thank you, Dr. Reynolds, and congratulations, everyone. Before we move on, I did forget to say something during board announcements. So some of our board members have some board achievement awards that they received from the New York State School Boards Association. So Ms. Lewis and Ms. Minaya, congratulations on your NSBA awards. And then myself and Ms. Williams, we received recognition awards from the Westchester Putnam School Boards Association for 5 years of service. So congratulations. You should have the certificate somewhere in your piles. Next up are discussion items, and our first item will be code of conduct. So board members, I'm going to let Dr. Reynolds set the stage, but if we can all move to the front row, you can bring your packets with the presentation, but they'll project the presentation for us to look at.
And to our board trustees, please take your microphones with you. In case you have any questions, we can do that from the floor. So thank you very much, Mr. President, and through the President and the Board of Education, I welcome everyone this evening to this presentation that will be delivered by our Department of Student Support Services. As it relates to, and I need everybody to understand, we're just talking about the process of the revision of our Code of Conduct. It's not going to delve into the nuances of the revised code itself. This is just speaking about the process. We're also going to speak a little bit about what next steps are for our community as we develop our code of conduct for our students. Once the code of conduct is fully developed and adopted by the Board of Education, then we will have another presentation by probably these members to walk us through the nuances of the code of conduct. That will be at the early part of our school year for the 24-25 school year. So tonight we're going to be led in this conversation by our Assistant Superintendent for Student Support Services, Dr. Gail Joyner, and she is going to also introduce members of her team, our Director for Pupil Personnel Services, Ms. Millicent Lee, as well as our Director for Family and Community Engagement, Mr. Eddie Castro. And with that, I'll turn it over to you, Dr. Joyner.
As I look up for the screen. Okay, so while we wait, maybe I'll just take advantage of this time and we'll get started because I want to be respectful of everyone's time. But we're just going to share a little bit about our Code of Conduct journey. And to the Superintendent of Schools, Dr. Corey Reynolds, Board President William Iannuzzi, board members, colleagues, staff, family, and community members, good evening. The Student Support Services team would like to thank the board for allowing us the opportunity to share how we are moving forward together with purpose with our Code of Conduct. Perfect. This evening's area of focus will include the redesign of the Code of Conduct. Our Director of Pupil Personnel Services, Ms. Millicent Lee, will provide us with updates regarding behavioral multi-tiered system of support, followed by our Director of Family and Community Engagement, Mr. Edward Castro, who will share with us where we are on the timeline and share the feedback received from our stakeholders. And then I will return to the podium with next steps. So as we set the stage, of course, everything we do is in alignment with our mission, vision, equity vision statement, and our core beliefs. What we want to share with you this evening is these compass points are now included in the Code of Conduct. So page 6 is where you will find these items. So you will see our mission, vision, and equity statement there. And it also is a little piece on how it aligns to the strategic plan. But I will say that the Code of Conduct is a set of expected behaviors and practices that helps to cultivate a welcoming and affirming environment. It serves as a guide to and provides the tools for helping students to understand and appreciate the norms of expected behaviors. The opening sentence of Dr. Reynolds' letter in the Code of Conduct to the community simply states, the City School District of New Rochelle is committed to providing safe, supportive schools that cultivate respectful environments conducive to learning and growth. We are committed to ensuring a fair and equitable experience for every student. To that end, we redesigned the Code of Conduct to provide an easier entry point for parents, guardians, and caregivers, to be aware of how student behavior is addressed equitably across schools. As I mentioned, our compass points are there. Another piece that we moved is the DASA section, the Dignity for All Students Act, used to be in the rear of the document. It is now in the beginning of the document because we want students and families to know how important it is to be treated a certain way. We also added the Crown Act and a section titled Getting Help for Students. That didn't exist prior to this Code of Conduct, this version, I should say, of the Code of Conduct. So there's a section right after DASA that tells you where the coordinators are that will tell you if you're having an issue in school, how can you get help academic, if you're being bullied, or just having a problem in school, period. It directs students and families on where they can get help. But the biggest focus is on promoting positive behavior. We added a civility statement in the rights, responsibilities, and expectations of stakeholders section. In addition to content redesign, we also made some aesthetic changes. So I'm excited to unveil our new code of conduct and the revised version. So this is what it used to look like, and this is what it will look like when you see it soon. There are pictures throughout the document. It will be much easier to navigate with the code of conduct and access the information. The revised version will be available for public comment beginning tomorrow, May 31st through June 30th. And I will share with you how to access the document during the next steps portion of this presentation. So it is a pleasure to introduce Ms. Millicent Lee, our Director of Pupil Personnel Services, to share updates on the multi-tiered system of support.
Thank you, Dr. Joyner. Good evening, everyone. So as a member of the Code of Conduct and to assist with revisions, my role is also to make sure that the updates are aligned with our tiered level behavioral interventions. So this is a familiar diagram, as it is also in the Code of Conduct. This is our multi-tiered system of support. It is a 3-tiered framework. Tier 1, naturally, is the universal school-wide targeted supports. Then Tier 2 is more small group targeted for our classrooms or a small group of students. And the most intensive is our Tier 3, which provides individualized supports and community-based organization connections. This is the foundation of how we will support our students with interventions in all of our schools. This is just a quick snapshot in reference to the multi-tier system support diagram. So the Tier 1 and Tier 2 are direct examples, a snapshot of the supports that we have in place and are directly aligned within our Code of Conduct. This is not an exhaustive list. However, it just provides some appropriate responses to behavioral incidents and/or concerns. And the committee is continuously working on adding additional strategies. And lastly is the Tier 3 level, as I stated earlier, most intensive supports for some of our students. These students will have access to community-based organizations and programs. Behavioral plans may be necessary. Transition plans may be implemented at the time, and definitely a high level of individualized counseling. And at this time, I'd like to now turn it over to Mr. Eddie Castro, Director of Family Community Engagement.
Good evening, everybody. I'll be walking you through the work we completed since we last presented. Since our last meeting, we continued drafting and revising a code of conduct, but we also began the process of acquiring our stakeholder input, and we're here tonight to share what we've learned. So who did we speak to? What did we find out? How did we gather input and receive feedback? First, who did we engage? As a quick refresher, as a committee, we sought to elicit feedback from a wide range of school community stakeholders. I am pleased to share that we were able to do so. We completed student focus groups, had formal and informal conversation with our parents, community members, and New Rochelle public safety entities such as emergency medical services and the New Rochelle Fire and Police Departments. One way we engaged our stakeholders were through office hours in the community, standing meetings, and one-on-one conversations throughout our school buildings and community. During these conversations, our stakeholders shared a wide range of thoughts. Shown on this screen are quotes from different individuals. As you can see, the importance of safe environment, training, and bullying came up. Phones were also an issue that came out in these conversations. The district also leveraged Thought Exchange. We've used this platform for the past 2 years to elicit responses to open-end questions. We gathered input utilizing this platform with our parents, the Federation of United School Employees, and Administrative and Supervisory Association. The question we asked were very similar. The common root was, what are some important things in order to support our school community or staff members? Our parents' Thought Exchange. Our parents were asked what are some important things to include in order to support our school community. The top themes were behavioral expectations, bullying prevention, and parental involvement. Sorry. For behavioral expectations, there was a focus on respect. In regard to bullying prevention, there was a need for prompt action that was clearly elevated. On the screen right now are our parents' top thoughts. Our parents elaborated on the respect for teachers comment. They are the people who direct our children in the school environment, and it is very important that they respect them. Regarding bullying prevention, kids can be cruel, and no kid should be ridiculed in any way. Our parents also acknowledge that racially charged and foul language creates a hostile environment. Our Fuse Thought Exchange, their members were asked what are some important things to include to support our faculty and staff members. The top themes were technology restrictions, behavioral accountability, and dress code enforcement. Across these top themes, there was a common thread of clear policies and accountability. The top thoughts for our Fuse members are currently on the screen. The common thread from our Fuse members were consequences, specifically the importance for them to be clear, direct, and defined to support our faculty and staff members. It's the last thought exchange, I promise. ANS, our supervisors. Our thought exchange with administrators, the top themes were inclusive communication, clarity, and consistency, and flexibility in punishment. The common theme across the thoughts were that they should be clear and concise, and that all voices should be considered. Flexibility in punishment was addressed with a focus on reducing excessive missed class time. On this screen, you'll see the top thoughts. There was a focus on clear language to avoid ambiguity in the document, and support to communicate in languages other than one's own was also highlighted. And the last point was there was training of de-escalation and restorative practices was also elevated by our ANS colleagues. We also did focus groups across the district, and one of the questions posed was, what are some important things to include to support you, your fellow classmates, and teachers? This was asked to students in our elementary and secondary schools. On this screen, you'll see some of the thoughts and sentiments that came up more than once. The notion of mutual trust and respect was consistently shared across our schools. Our students were eager to share their concern about what happens to an individual when one makes a mistake, and they also shared places that are important to them. Additional sentiments are reflected on this slide: consistency in interventions, accountability, equity, the importance of communicating, safety and awareness of our surroundings. Our students are aware of these factors, and it serves as an important reminder that we must continue our work of creating and maintaining a culture and climate that is welcoming and affirming in order to support our students so that they can focus on their studies and continue to grow. And now I'll invite Dr. Joyner to go over next steps.
You could just stay here. Your noses don't go too far, right? All right, so our next steps include translating a document into multiple languages: Spanish, Arabic, Urdu, and Haitian Creole. We will also create a summary of the Code of Conduct to share with students and families. The complete Code of Conduct will be posted on the district and school websites, and the rollout of the Code of Conduct, as I mentioned before, is a critical piece of the work so that all stakeholders become familiar with the document. It's nice to create a new document, but if people are not familiar with it, it defeats the purpose. So we will facilitate professional learning for district administrators and new staff in July and August during the administrators retreat and new staff orientation. In September, schools will have the opportunity to teach the code of conduct lessons to students. The lessons are designed K-12. It's a little fun lesson for our kindergarten students. I'll share some of that when I come back to you in the beginning of the year, but it's really designed, this code of conduct, for students in grades 3 to 12. There's a special section that speaks to how we should address our K-2 learners. So that's in the document as well. But the lessons should be revisited in January upon return from winter break. So twice a year is the expectation, September, and then again in January. The Code of Conduct Committee will continue to meet and elicit feedback from stakeholders so that we can make any warranted changes for the following school year. In addition, this summer, there are members of the Code of Conduct Committee that will join the Behavioral Committee to support the development of the MTSS Behavioral Framework. The committee will identify, and provide resources to schools to support interventions. So as we continue the expansion of our community-based organizations, we welcomed a new program this year, and that would be the Youth Justice Equity Team, also known as YJET. This program is designed to support youth ages 11 to 17, mostly in Tier 3 is where we start, and then we drop down to Tier 2 as well. YJET implements positive intervention measures through education, vocational training, and community support, with the ultimate goal of reducing youth involvement in the criminal justice system and prepare them for life after high school. So we are excited about this new code of conduct and the work that we will be doing to launch it. So this is where we need your help. It is available tomorrow. It'll be posted on the district website for public review and comment, May 31st through June 30th, as mentioned before. Comments can be sent to feedback@nredlearn.org. So we look forward to any feedback that you have as you review this document. So I just want to take a moment and say thank you to the members of FUSE and Ms. Mary Claire, who is a member of our committee. Thank you very much for the work that you did. Both of these individuals that stand before you were also members of the committee, and you see the list of names of people that contributed. So we appreciate all of their work. But our parents as well, we thank them and our subcommittee members for your unwavering commitment to collaborate to co-design a code of conduct that is caring with accountability, because we can hold students accountable, but in a loving way. To Mr. Castro, I extend a special thank you for graciously facilitating many of our sessions. So I wanted to thank you publicly, and I'm going to give Colin Smith a shout out, because the meeting would have been incomplete without those amazing donuts. I don't know where he got them from, but there were some donuts that we all smiled when we saw them coming in the room. So thank you. But I just want to acknowledge you all and appreciate you publicly for going above and beyond to complete this document. It was a task, but it was a labor of love. So let's give a round of applause to this amazing team on the screen and those that are present. So those of you that know me know that when you see this slide, this is the end, right? So in closing, I just want to remind everyone that the book, Powerful Student Care, realigns the conversation from a focus on all students to a focus on each student. It refers to each learner as unique, distinctive, and irreplaceable, and reminds us of the importance of focusing on fixing systems and not kids. This revised code of conduct will help us continue to cultivate a welcoming and affirming environment, and we are not done. The work continues, and we look forward to rolling out the new code of conduct, so we still need all hands on deck. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Joyner, and thank the committee for all the hard work that you're doing. This is like maybe a question for Dr. Reynolds. Do you think at our next board meeting we can actually go through what changes were made to the code of conduct so we can publicly show it and the board can see exactly what changes were made?
Yes.
Thank you very much for that question, Mr. President. I respectfully request an opportunity to have the feedback opportunity from the community before we present that, because I wouldn't want to present to the community changes that were made from one document to the other and they not be finalized. Unless,
The only thing is, how would they know if things are being changed? Is it, does it clear, does it show like there's like a comment or like a red line that shows that an item was being changed?
I appreciate that. So no, currently this new code of conduct is not a marked version because it is almost a drastic change from what we've done. So I will say yes. Our next meeting is on June 11th. June 11th. We can work on that? Yes, we can work on that.
Or even something that, like a slide that shows like, oh, this drastically changed to this, just something so the board can see exactly
Absolutely.
what the major themes and changes are.
Sure, I'll work with the team on that, and we'll be sure to have something to present on June
Okay.
11th.
Do any of them, Ms. Gwen Clayton Fernandez?
Hi there. Well done. I just had a few questions.
Mhm.
How this document will circulate to the parents, the students, and everything. So is there like a launch of it that will kind of go forward to, I mean, I can see that, but how is that working in terms of like, I know it's summer, we're about to hit summer, so what should the community expect?
So in September, there will be a summary of the code of conduct that contains those important areas that parents need to reference really quickly. The entire document will be placed on the school website as well as the district website. The document itself is approximately 38 pages, and again, when you take a look at it, when I note the changes, you'll see that the first 10 or 15 really are specific, and then there's a table of behavior interventions that administrators will use. So they will see the summary, but the students will also have an opportunity to interact with the document in September. That's when I mentioned the lessons. So these lessons are designed to take them to page 6 and identify the word and an activity around that. So they will have an opportunity to interact so they get to know the document a little better instead of just the summary. I want them to see the full document and the summary. So the lessons are designed for students around the full document, but families will get a copy of the summary. And also at our family and community engagement sessions, our family university, we will move forward sharing information with families there. So they will see the code of conduct again in its entirety. We will have a lesson to interact with the document because it's just not about giving it to them. It's about how will we interact with the document as families, and they will also receive a summary because they too need to be familiar with the document if we're going to use it to interact with their children. So students, families, administrators, everybody will have the same opportunity to engage and become familiar with the document in a different way.
Okay, and last little question. So when you pull the student body to get involved with unveiling the document, I mean, will it be across all the sports, leadership? How will you engage the student body for this particular document?
All schools will have lessons to teach in September, meaning, you know, when they come back, they can do it one or two ways. We just know, but we didn't share with you yet. It's 3 30-minute lessons or 2 45-minute lessons. So it's a 90-minute block. So it's either over 2 45-minute periods or over 3 30 minutes. But it's different sections, and again, it's scenarios where we give students scenarios. If a student's being bullied, if this has happened and you were the administrator, what would you do? And it allows them to turn to page 72, or we don't have 72 pages, but page 32, and take a look at how they might interact. This allows them to become familiar with the document because there's nothing worse than trying to hold someone accountable for something they haven't seen before. So we think it's really important that they see it before we have to utilize it. Hopefully we won't, because the things that we learn may make us make better choices.
I do
Do I
have
have
a
the
quick,
microphone?
sorry, Will. This question is for us or for the team. I just saw my way here after work, because this is brand new, that like Hochul is considering signing a bill for the smartphone, cell phones in class or school building. So if or when anything happens at the state level, is it easy for us to make changes to this? Does it have to go through us and then you make change? Like, how does that process work?
Thank you very much. So that question has come up and has actually been raised by some members of our community, some parents. How is it that we are dealing with cell phone use in schools? I will say I would want us to caution ourselves as a school district, because a more progressive school district, I consider us to be one of those progressive school districts, we'll be able to impart rules, regulations, and procedures that will allow us to use these $1,000 computers in our pocket to help to increase our instructional practices. But in cases where they become a distraction, we also have to have the wherewithal to limit their use if they're not being used productively during instruction. Currently, we have practices in place that are classroom specific. So some teachers, depending on what it is that they're teaching, may state, put your cell phones up front in the front of the room. You can, get it when you need to, but you can't be interacting during instruction. Other teachers utilize the cell phones, for on-the-spot quizzes where you can link the computer to tell the children to go to this particular app, give a quick quiz, and the students can enter their quizzes in real time. You can see what the rate is in real time of the responses, so we don't want to limit that. What Governor Hochul's proposal will do is it will allow school districts to create policies. So that will have to go through our policy committee. We can create a policy separate than what has to be enforced in our code of conduct, because the behaviors in the code of conduct, remember, as Dr. Joyner says, is geared to changing the system and not the child or the specific behavior. So that the infraction of the policy would fall under a specific behavior under a behavior that's outlined in our code of conduct. So we wouldn't necessarily have to change the code if we have the policy in place.
Katie?
Thank you for the thoughtful work, and I especially appreciate that there were so many voices and so many different stakeholders that were part of this, particularly making sure that students' voices themselves were included in this. Of course, kids have no filter, and they're gonna just tell it to us straight, and there's a lot of very alarming comments even in the presentation from the students themselves, and we have to listen to them. We have to listen to them, their realities. Same teachers are telling us they need the support, they need the clear expectations, and our administrators are saying, they wanna make sure it's not a one-size-fits-all outcome. That's important because we're not just talking about one monolith of a student or a community. We're talking about neurodiverse students who may be in a self-contained class, who might be exceptional and in a gen ed class, but struggle with certain behaviors. We know that to be true. We might have students that are newcomers and have to learn both a new language and the expectations of what is school in New Rochelle and in a new country. So I do really appreciate that there were so many different voices that were a part of the creation of this. And I guess I would just say that if it has not yet already been done, making sure that the lens of special education, the lens of multilingual learners, and even the lens of new state rights for gender nonconforming students are woven throughout, and look at the code of conduct through that lens, just to ensure, like my colleague is saying, that we don't end up having to make so many revisions to it. We want this to be so crystal clear, right? Orientations are happening now. We're preparing incoming students now and families now. We're having meetings now. We're preparing for next year already, even though it's still only May. So I look forward to just the transparency, making sure everyone is a part of this, maybe even signing off that we understand it, and holding ourselves accountable as a community, that this is what we're gonna do to create safe schools, inclusive communities. And I would love to see the potential of even making sure that there's an acknowledgement of this, so that when we are holding ourselves accountable and holding students accountable, well, we can say, well, yes, we acknowledged this code of conduct. We agreed to it. This is what it's going to take to keep our schools safe, not feeling like jails, not feeling like students are being targeted with racial language. We have to look at the data, and the data is shining a mirror on us. And so I think holding us accountable is the right way to go, and we are here to support.
Thank you.
Do any other of my colleagues have any comments? Ms. Williams?
Yes, thank you very much for all the work that you've done, and to the team and the children and the parents. My question is, can you just quickly repeat the rollout launch date and the window of time? And also, can you mention how people will be notified of the survey?
So the code of conduct will be rolled out in July and August with our administrators and new teachers, and also with, when I say district administrators, which is assistant principals, principals, and directors. They will also receive the lessons that they are expected to go back and roll out at their schools. Our team will provide support with those lessons, but they're pretty self-explanatory. As I said, it's 3 30-minute lessons or 2 45-minute lessons. It's 90 minutes, and it's really scripted. Like, here's the opening activity, here's the interaction, here's the question, ask this question. So it's really, really scripted, and it's very easy and adaptable. So we'll roll it out to principals and assistant principals, and they can roll it out to their teachers. But again, our team is here to support and go to schools if they need any additional support. But the design of the lessons is really, they can implement it without extensive professional learning, I will say. They will need some professional learning, but it's not extensive.
And
And
did
to-
we develop the lessons in-house, or did we purchase them from
We developed them.
We
The
developed
committee
them.
developed them. So what we're gonna do, because when we got here initially, we had a code of conduct, right? So we had some lessons and we adapted those for that code of conduct, because last year and the year before, our 9th graders at the high school used them on DASA Day. So they were actually we piloted, so to speak, with them, and some of our elementary schools used them as well. So we shared the lessons, K-5 and 612 lessons, with our principals, and they did use them with their students. But we want to create consistency now around this new document, so we're going to revise those lessons and add some new scenarios based on the new portions of the code that we added, i.e. the Crown Act was added based on 2019 legislation that came down. So we did add that right under DASA. You will now see the Crown Act. So we're going to direct one of the scenarios to that so that people see the importance of acknowledging hair and hair coverings and people that are different. And
And if I may add, just to answer 2 other of your questions, please be reminded that the document itself will be available for public comment beginning tomorrow, closing on June 30th, correct?
Correct.
Closing on June 30th. It will be displayed on our district website, and what we will do is we will also send out one of our blasts to the entire community, knowing that, to let them know that it's available for public comment on the website.
Thank you. And you mentioned that you added some sections to the code of conduct. What led to adding those sections?
So there were like questions. What do I do when I need help, like for students? So it's a section called Getting Help for Students that we thought was important. Right behind the DASA, after we explain what DASA is, it tells you where to find your DASA coordinator, but it also identifies some areas. If you're having an academic struggle, this is where you can go and this is who you can go to. So there's a page, it's a one-pager, it's very child-friendly, that really just bullets. This is where you go if this is happening, so that they don't have to try to figure it out, their parents either, because parents, this will be helpful to them as well when they go to the school. I don't have to go to all these different people. I can look at that one pager and see where do I go if I need help. And it was important because a lot of our students indicated that they didn't know where to go. They do, but they don't. Some do and some don't. It depends on the experiences that they've had. So we just wanted to put it in front of the document so that they don't have to look to the rear of the document to figure out where to get help. So let's look at this and try to get help before we get to the discipline section of the document, because we don't want to make that poor choice. Maybe this section will minimize some of those choices.
Ms. Clayton, and then, Ms. Ross, Ms. Ross, first, and Ms. Clayton.
Sure. So just, well, thank you for, I think, all the work that you guys have done sort of to set it up. I guess my question is going towards the continuing to have it be a living and breathing document, right? Because you hear the kids and the students and the teachers, and the teachers are saying they want consequences, right? Like they want there to be consequences for actions. On the other hand, you hear the students say about it feeling like a jail, or that it's not fair, or these things are really stringent. And so how do we make sure that we sort of keep those 2 voices, but find that balance? Because, you know, we're going to roll it out. It's going to be new, but continuing to kind of get that feedback so that we can try to find what is that right balance between the 2.
Thank you very much for that. That is a very great question. I've had quite a bit of experience with different codes of conduct, having worked in various school districts. I will state that sweet spot that you're speaking about, where it's appropriate consequence, but not overly punitive, where it makes the child, and I'm using child here for everyone who's between the ages of 4 and 21 that we, that we educate. It doesn't make the child resentful, right? Because oftentimes what we find is that a behavior is not necessarily a conscious decision that is produced by a being who's fully formed. So we have to be able to address behaviors in a manner that is age appropriate, but also appropriate to the offense itself. So there's that thin line of there's certain behaviors which will not be accepted that we have to be pretty hard-lined on, where there is a consequence for that. Now, the consequence itself can be age-based, right? So I'm going to, I'm treading thin ice here. So I'm going to use the example of an inappropriate touch, right? So if it's over the clothes, inappropriate touch, no matter what gender or identity does it to another person. If it's a kindergartner, first grader, right, pre-kindergartner who does it, the consequence may not necessarily be an out-of-school suspension. If it's an aggressive type of a behavior that's repeated by someone who's in high school, who technically should know better, and I'm using air quotes here, the consequence would be different, particularly because of the offense nature of the person who's receiving that behavior. But there will be a consequence nonetheless. And then there are certain aspects of that which will not be deviated from. So informing the parent is key, making sure that we have that homeschool connection so that there's a parent, teacher, or a school home opportunity to discuss why this behavior is not appropriate. And that's also most important. I grew up in a time where my parents said, don't do it because I said so. Now our students are becoming individuals who will ask, well, why? It's important for us as educators to be exactly that, educate students as to why this isn't an appropriate or acceptable behavior. So that is the other part of the nuance of our code of conduct, which talks about the education, re-education, and re-assimilation of the student after the consequence. So that's the area that we really need to focus on.
Yeah, that idea of fair process. If the person understands before they do something what a consequence could be, and they know that they violated, it's much easier for them to process than telling them after the fact, I'm going to suspend you. That's the first thing they say, that's not fair. But if they understand this code and we interact with it a certain way, they will come to your office and say, Miss, I know I was wrong. I know there's going to be a consequence, and I won't do that again. But they'll understand it differently. So I think it's really important that we socialize the document so they understand this concept that we utilized as a committee called Fair Process to create it, which is engaging people and make sure that we're clear on expectations.
And how will we continue to support it, right? Because I appreciate that we'll do it in the beginning of the year, which is probably more, I don't know if we've done it every year, kind of every year, but how do we continue to support that, right? Because if you tell me something at the beginning of the year, I'll probably forget within a couple of weeks myself, but.
That's why a part of the plan is to a bare minimum, having it done twice a year. So what was expressed is that the intent is to do it not only in the beginning of each year for the students, and yes, it's going to become repetitive if you're with us from pre-K through 12, but that's okay. But also to do it in January after we come back from the winter break.
And if needed, in December before we go, whenever they need it, they can address pieces of this code as needed.
Got it, thank you.
Clayton?
Yes, so in the piece on page 20, you mentioned administrative and supervisory association as part of your stakeholders. How involved will the security around all of the schools, including lunch monitors in the preschool, in the elementary ages, and coaches and that whole out-of-school consortium of people that are with our kids after the hours of class time?
So it's a two-pronged question. Our security team did participate in a thought exchange. They were part of the Fuse thought exchange. We had a director of security sit on the code of conduct team, so that was disseminated to them as well. In terms of the rollout, we have some work during the summer that we are going to figure out how do we get this information out to all the different levels of staff so that it can be disseminated to them, they can process it, and we'll have a common shared vision of how it should be used. So that is work to come this summer.
And please know, any personnel who's hired from within or outside of the district as a coach is required to be familiar with our code of conduct as a part of the requirement for the job.
Do any other of my colleagues have any questions or comments? Seeing none?
If I may, I need to stress, though, and thank you to my board members for all of the questions, and thank you to the team for your great presentation. I need to stress to the community, the one thing that is most important is this code of conduct, it's not just for the students. It's for every person who interacts in the school district of the city of New Rochelle. So it applies to our students, it applies to the adults that work here, it applies to our parents, it applies to our visitors. It applies to anyone who is at a district-sponsored event, even if it is off-site, and it applies during transportation times, even at the bus stop before the bus gets there. So that is why it's important that we all become familiar with it. This is a living document to your question. It is going to be reviewed and revised each year. Actually, by law, we have to re-adopt our code of conduct annually, but we want everyone to know that this is meant for all of us. None of us are above the code of conduct, myself included. So keeping in mind that level of respect, that level of accountability, that level of community, that applies to all of us throughout, and that's what this code intends to impart upon each of us. So we hope that everybody really becomes familiar with this document.
Thank you very much, Dr. Reynolds and team. Colleagues, we can return to our seats for the next discussion item, which is the 24-25 board meeting calendar. All right, colleagues, the next item of discussion is the draft board meeting calendar for the 24-25 school year. So you do have it in your packets, and it's on board docs, but I want to go through, there's certain dates that are on Thursdays compared to Tuesdays, which we usually have meetings. I want to share why that is. So if you're looking at the calendar, our reorganizational meeting starts on Tuesday, July 2nd. And then our first Thursday meeting will be Thursday, September 5th, because that is the first full day of school. So we usually have a meeting on the first full day of school, and we'll be hosting that in this theater right here. Going through September and October, our next Thursday meeting is November 2nd. The Tuesday of that week is Election Day, and we will be closed. And then I have the meeting on Tuesday, December 17th highlighted. We have one directly the week before on December 10th. So highlighted because do we need to have that meeting if there's not too much going on? I put that as like a question mark that maybe we'll have this meeting, and just hearing from board colleagues and maybe the administration before December, we'll probably know if we need to have a second meeting in December. January, February looks good. Then we get to March. So Thursday, March 20th is a meeting because Tuesday, the 18th is a superintendent conference day. We are closed. We have one Thursday, April 3rd. The reason that is that Eid is on the Monday of that week. So for now, so that's why I wanted to keep Tuesday clear just in case it gets changed. So we moved it to a Thursday that week. And then Thursday, April 24th. This is right after spring break, so I wanted to give the administration their personnel time so we don't have one immediately right when they get back. They have an extra 2 days to prepare for the meeting. And that is why certain dates are moved on Thursdays. If you guys have any questions or comments, you can say it right now, or you can let me know. But the plan is, if there is no issues with this draft calendar, we will adopt it at our next meeting, the first meeting in June. So maybe this is time if you can review it when you get home, look at it. If I missed any religious holidays that might be observed, please let me know. I tried to look at the school calendar we adopted and any holidays we usually observe. So hopefully I didn't miss anything. All right. All right, next up on the agenda is liaison reports. Do anyone have any reports they would like to make? All right, seeing none, we're going to move on to public comment. Ladies and gentlemen, we are about to convene into the public comment period of the meeting. The Board of Education adopted Policy 1230 in April 2022 to ensure all members of the public had the opportunity to speak at both of our board meetings each month. We believe it is crucial for us to hear from our community members about their concerns and issues. Having said that, please note that the board is here to listen. The public comment period is not designed to be a discussion. Accordingly, understand the board will not respond to your concerns and questions tonight. We take your concerns and questions seriously and want to have sufficient time to process and research issues if need be. We will, however, respond to your questions and concerns at a future meeting or have the proper staff member get back to you at the appropriate time. I also want to point out that under state and federal privacy laws, we are unable to entertain any comments or questions about school personnel and students. Please know, however, that we take personal concerns very seriously. On these matters, we would ask you to go through the appropriate administrative channels. Finally, we recognize that right now our nation and our community are polarized on a number of issues. That said, we want our school board meetings to serve as an example to our students that members of our school board and members of our community can deal with controversial issues in a civil manner and demonstrate mutual respect for one another. In that spirit, we will insist that all speakers and members of the audience maintain civility and respect for any divergent views that others possess. We ask that speakers please address their comments to the board directly rather than the audience. In the unlikely event the meeting becomes unruly, the board will recess the meeting and return once order has been restored. Finally, I want to remind everyone that you may submit written comments to the board in lieu of speaking during the public comment period if you so choose. Tonight, we've set aside 45 minutes for public comment, where each speaker who has signed up before 3:30 today has 3 minutes to speak. If a person requests to speak after 3:30, speakers may sign up in person at the meeting with the clerk. Our first speaker of the night is Mr. Stephen Mayo.
Hello, everybody. Thank you for the opportunity. First of all, I want to congratulate the new board. Secondly, a gentle recommendation, I think, for the interest of parent and public involvement. I request that we consider an additional 3 weeks or so, some reasonable extension to the current campaign period. I think that could be justified for newbies, those new to town or others unfamiliar with our political dynamics here in New Rochelle. Finally, as a public charter school veteran of 3 boards and legal and press counsel to MSLT Public Charter School founder, Professor Ivan Green, requesting approval for a year from September, I ask you to be open to the special promise of public charter schools generally. A bit of news also, it seems 2 more public charter school applicants, in addition to our own proposed MSLT public charter school, are coming to town. Let's give public school choice a chance for New Rochelle kids of color and all others. Thank you.
Next up is Mr. Malfitano.
Hi, good evening, Vince Malfitano. And congratulations to the new set of folks on the board. I've been welcoming people to this board for nearly 40 years now. Let's hope we get a little bit of fresh air in terms of a little diversity of thought. That can be dangerous. Question came up about speaking time and things like that during the campaign. And the community may or may not remember that we used to have 5 minutes to speak. And we never got such a long discussion at the beginning, warning as to what's going to happen if, God forbid, you talk out of turn. If you go to City Hall to their citizens to be heard, where all manner of things are discussed, do you know what the mayor says before people call to the mic? Nothing. Nothing, except you have 3 minutes to speak. But you may remember, because some people brought some unpopular topics to this board, Mr. Iannuzzi, when he became president, first made the comment, the public should be aware that they do not have the right to speak at school board meetings. You may not remember that. That the board is not required to let me speak tonight. You only let me speak because you allow it. Now, I met with Senator Fernandez the other day, and I've talked to Steve Otis about amending the open meetings law. Now, you guys ought to be advocates for free speech, the home of Thomas Paine, Norman Rockwell, the Four Freedoms. If you are advocates for free speech, suggest that the open meetings law be amended. Right now it says the public has the right to attend a public meeting, and the public's business must be conducted in public at regular meetings. I've asked, and the senator may carry this, that you add a small provision, and the public has the right to speak. You can allot 30 minutes any way you want, and if nobody shows up like tonight, you don't have to sit here for 30 minutes with a dead mic. But what are you afraid of with free speech? Are you afraid to carry that? Mr. Singh, Ms. Fernandez? Do you believe in free speech? Let's see. Let's see how many of you carry that. Are you afraid of free speech? Yeah, you are. You are, because nobody's carried this thought ever since I brought it up. But now we have some new members. But behind closed doors, you're going to be hearing something else, that we have to warn and scare the public. By the way, please have public speaking before your presentations. Let's try to have some open thinking on this board. Thank you.
Would anyone else like to sign up for public comment tonight? Ms. Futz?
Hi, good evening. My name is Sharon Foots. So I want to say the PC thing is, I think that we have some amazing teachers in the city of New Rochelle. And not to be PC, but I actually believe that. But we have some, the district has a lot of work to do as far as I'm concerned. The school district, I believe, and where we're at with most recent incidents, and I know I can't name specific names or what have you, has failed again. And what I want to say is pretty much, who is worth your attention? What needs to happen for you all to actually do something? Those of you who are on the board, some of you who are more recently have been nominated to the board, have campaigned some great things, but I don't see them being actionable. I see them just being things that got you elected. We're not moving in the right directions. It seems like whether it's teachers over everyone, it's not my problem, union scare tactics, students who need higher level of care, being forced in environments that are ill-equipped for them. One of the platforms of, I'm not even gonna mention that because then that means I'm talking about a specific person. I think that one of the things that could happen specifically with SEPTA, special ed children, could be a tracking sheet of how they are, how they engage with their teachers in the rooms, if in fact they're having behavioral issues, if the teacher has had behavioral issues with them, i.e. like the student hit the teacher, or the teacher needed, I'm trying to be mindful of the time. Because what is happening is that I also believe that the aides are not being supported in the classroom. I think that there needs to be a revision on some of the student population and how and where they are placed. And then the short of this is that what I see is that Black bodies in our district are expendable because Black teachers continue to be placed in highly volatile situations with students where students are hitting, cursing, spitting on aides, and our sketch union is not doing anything to support these teachers. And I'm going to say, because on 162 Clinton Avenue, we pay about $30,000 of taxes. And I got 30,000 reasons to stand up here and be upset with a proposed $370 million budget. And I'm seeing more people in admin get jobs and raises, and less people in as aides being assisted and being assisted with information and things that they could use to help them better themselves in the classroom. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Foots. Would anybody else like to sign up for public comment tonight? Okay, seeing none, we're going to move on to new business consent agenda personnel resolutions. All right. Colleagues, can I get a motion and second to approve consent agenda for personnel resolutions number 24-260, 1 through 2, number 24-261, 1 through 12, number 24-262, 1 through 16, number 24-263, 1 through 4, number 24-264, 1 through 13, and number 24-265, according to the recommended action for each item.
So moved, Ross?
Second, Lewis.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Next is new business consent agenda general resolutions. Colleagues, can I get a motion and a second to approve consent agenda for general resolutions number 24-266 through number 24-280, according to the recommended action for each item.
So moved, Castellano Minaya.
Second, Lewis.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Our next meeting is going to be a committee of the whole session on Tuesday, June 11th at Central Administration at City Hall. Tonight, we are adjourning in memory of two people, Carol Nardone, a retired senior office assistant at New Rochelle High School, who passed away on May 12, 2024, and Catherine Suma, a retired food server at New Rochelle High School, who passed away on May 25th, 2024. Colleagues, can I get a motion and a second to adjourn the meeting?
So move Vega.
Second, Lewis.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?